All right, well, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining this morning for a coffee conversation with the Northwest Michigan Food and Farming Network. I was just verifying that we're still in the listings as the Food Policy Council entity and for Northwest Lower Michigan. We do connect about food policy issues, and we also are focused on community outreach about food systems topics and issues and opportunities for engagement, as well as kind of food systems collaboration across partners from different sort of stakes within the food and farming system here locally. I'm Daniel Marbury. I work for an organization called the Crosshatch Center for Art and Ecology. We're a small nonprofit. My founders are based in Bel Air, Michigan, which is kind of our heart home. I live in Leelanau County, just north of Traverse, and we primarily do food and farming education kind of in a peer learning format, so farmer to farmer, neighbor to neighbor. I'm pleased to be joining with some other partners and farmers this morning as we engage in our topic. Before we do so, though, I do want to acknowledge, since we're going to be addressing a topic which will discuss issues of access to land and access to resources, I want to acknowledge our Native and Indigenous people, the Anishinaabe, whose land we occupy and inhabit, and who are still our neighbors currently here. I just want to acknowledge that they've stewarded this land through generations, and I want to honor more than 500 years that the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Ottawa people have demonstrated resilience and resistance in the face of violent efforts to separate them from their land, culture, and each other. I just want to pause for a moment to give gratitude for their continued leadership in movements and efforts to sustain and protect Mother Earth and the life it sustains. So as we think about growing abundance, let's keep them in our thoughts and in our partnerships as we move forward. With that, I'm pleased to introduce a beloved partner in the Grand Traverse Conservation District. We're joined by Kofi Pachavi, Lauren Silver, and Parker Amel, who are gonna kick us off with some food for thought for a project that they're really excited about to help with this issue of kind of beginning farming. And then I'll also introduce a few farmer friends who've taken some time out of the field this morning to join us today. And then we'll welcome everyone to contribute to the conversation and questions to unfold. I think since we're kind of already a pretty full room, I might just ask that as folks offer a question or something to the dialogue, that you introduce yourself. And we won't do a full round of introductions, and we'll just dive in and get energized by hearing what everyone has to share on this topic today. I'll turn it over to the Grand Traverse Conservation District folks.
All right, thanks, Daniel. Yeah, my name is Parker. Like Daniel said, with the Grand Traverse Conservation District and the Great Lakes Incubator Farm Program. So yeah, the topic today, issues and barriers we've, kind of have recognized in the area, like many partners and many folks. And, one of those is, of course, the average age of farmers is getting up there. It's about 58 years old. And another one is land succession, right? So in Northern Michigan specifically, the Grand Traverse Regional Land Conservancy has estimated that 83,000 acres of farmland will transition hands in the next 10 years. So it's become increasingly difficult for retiring farmers to transition their land to new farming to keep it in land and agricultural production, while young and beginning farmers face significant challenges in building new agricultural operations due to the high startup capital costs for land, infrastructure, equipment, and the like. With that trend, as most new farmers are often first-generation farmers. So folks who grew up on farms, it's trending that they're electing not to necessarily keep on with the farming and pursue a different career path. So folks who are just getting into farming don't quite have that inheritance of land and infrastructure. In some cases, lack that firsthand knowledge behind running a farm business. So we've, kind of recognized this with some partners and are starting the Great Lakes Incubator Farm Program, which is going to be an active land-based agricultural program that will foster the growth and development of new and beginning farmers in our region. So the incubator farm concept, it's not new. There are, about 130 plus farm incubator programs throughout the U.S. Our farm is going to be located on Keystone Road across from the soccer fields. I think many of you know where that is. It's known as the Meyer property. In total, it's about 10 acres, 7 to 8 of which will be used for agriculture for our program. So in our program, we're hoping to start with 2 to 3 farmers, and once admitted to the program, they can stay for up to 5 years. We'll have farmers entering and leaving kind of on a rotational basis. And the hope is, once they graduate out of the program, we can help them transition to another site where they can continue to grow their business, potentially start, farm co-ops with other farmers. And, the goal is once graduated, the participants will have well-established markets and sales accounts, efficient and effective production methods, a broad understanding of critical farmer skills, environmental stewardship, business management, record keeping, all that stuff. So we're really excited, and yeah, that's kind of an introduction to our program. So yeah, thanks, Daniel.
Would anyone else from that program add any quick addition?
No, Daniel, he's got it covered pretty well. Thank you.
I would just add one additional piece to the program model is to really hone in on some regenerative agricultural practices, and we really want the farmers that are on at Glyph are serving as ambassadors, as they graduate for a more regenerative agricultural model. So that's the only thing I'd add.
We do hope that, the farm also, part of it will be a demonstration farm too, where we'll be more public facing, where we can host events and classes and workshops, and really, get our, community to experience, regenerative agriculture firsthand, while also providing a space for our participants. So we're hoping to kind of do 2 birds with 1 stone in that regard. So, yeah.
Yeah, before we transition to some individual farm stories, I'm curious to ask y'all for a story as to maybe one of the light bulb moments that sent you in this direction of pursuing this sort of opportunity for the region. Anything come to mind as far as a connection you had with a new beginning farmer or
yeah, I think it has come out of that networking. You talk to folks that we know, working on farms in the area, or they've been maybe a manager at a farm for a few years, or they've been a farmhand for a couple summers, and just in conversation like, oh man, I'd love to start my own farm right now, but in Leelanau County, I couldn't imagine buying land right now, or the price of a tractor and getting a loan, a farm loan, just seems daunting. So some of those conversations we've had, and then since we've kind of started building this program out, and we've ran a couple articles in some various newspapers, and started a Facebook page. We've had individuals reach out and say, hey, we're really interested in this program. Once it gets going, I'd love to be considered to be a participant and start my business in the program. So yeah, it's been really exciting, and yeah, there's definitely been some interest, and I think a need that folks have expressed.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think, Parker and I, we work with farmers all around Northwest Michigan, and I feel like I heard a lot from a lot of the farmers that I was working with that were kind of looking to soon retire. I mean, they were getting, in their 70s, and they didn't have children that were interested in taking over the farm business. And, I would talk to folks about, the various options in terms of like apprenticeships for somebody to take over, because they just really wanted to see their land stay in agricultural production and didn't want to have to resort to selling to potentially a developer, that's going to put in a golf course or a new housing neighborhood or subdivision or something like that. And so I think kind of the conglomeration of all of those things kind of sparked this idea. And like Parker said, this isn't a novel idea, but it kind of is for our area. We don't really have anything like this, or particularly, in Northwest Michigan at the moment. And so we're just really hoping that this, is a really comprehensive program that will provide the tools that can, help support successful farming businesses, but also aid in that transition piece, because we really would, our hope is that we'll see some of these graduating farmers helping those that are retiring and trying to find successors for their farming operation, either leasing or purchasing, or even just signing on as a manager to manage that operation for somebody. So we don't have that looming development threat hanging over people's heads all the time, because that's land can be is certainly a lot of people's legacy, and they don't want to see it go into the hands of something they don't want to be productive. So
Before we move on, I'm going to keep the spotlight on you for one last question, which is, if this is piquing interest for folks today, how would you encourage them to connect and stay engaged? And what's going to be the next big press release we'll hear from you? What's the next step we'll be hearing about?
Yeah, so we do have a Facebook page, the Great Lakes Incubator Farm, or GLIF, where we periodically post on there. We have an advisory committee that meets fairly regularly, about every month. And yeah, so we've signed a lease with the county, so we'll start moving on that property. So when you drive down Keystone, you'll probably see some cover crops going in this summer, and you'll start seeing some active land use there, which has been those fields have been fallow for quite some time now, so it's pretty exciting. I had something else I was going to say with that. We have started applying for some grants, so we're kind of in that fundraising phase right now. So you may see some opportunities to help chip in and get our program off the ground. We've applied for some bigger grants that we won't find out back on for a few months out. So yep, we're in that fundraising phase right now, and we've got the land secured, and we're hoping that maybe as soon as next spring we'll have incubator farm participants on site. So, yeah.
Yeah, and feel free, if people have any questions or anything like that, you can email Parker, Kofi, or I at any time, and we'd be happy to talk more about this. We love talking about it. So, but we won't talk your ear off too much today, because there's a lot of other great dialogue to be had. But yeah, if you can also find us on Facebook, just type in Great Lakes Incubator Farm and kind of follow our progress there. And feel free to direct message on Facebook if you have any questions, or even just find a cool article related to what we're doing. We're always looking for ways to learn ourselves about how to better this program. So any help is very, very welcome.
So Lauren, how about putting in the chat box your emails so that we have them?
Yep, I will do that right now.
Great, thanks.
Yep, and with a lot of other farmers on the call here too, we are trying to build that network too with our incubator farmers. So just opportunities to connect with the farmers, and we're hoping we can have mentors in the area that they can call on and talk to, and team up on events and things as needed. And then also, we probably will be accepting donations, like if you get a new seeder and you're not using your old one or anything. Some of those, small, equipment stuff, we'll be looking to gather for the participants too. So, yeah, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. I'm going to transition to introduce a new farmer I've recently met. Her name is Nicole Masewski, and she farms with her husband, Zachary, goes by Zach. I'm picking up, and they can share a story of intergenerational farming that maybe might have skipped a generation, but also story of sort of a new farming effort in Bear Lake, Michigan. Nicole, thanks for joining this morning.
Hi.
You wanted to share just a brief introduction to you, your family, and farm?
Yeah. So, like you said, we're in Bear Lake, Michigan, and we're on land that was once owned by his grandfather and farmed by his grandfather and several generations. So we're not sure if we're the fifth or the sixth, but around there. Zach's dad, his family also farmed in Brethren, but he kind of got burnt out from farming. And in the 90s, Zach's grandfather stopped farming, just the hardships that were going on at that time. And so the land that we're on was about 27 years out of production when we took over. It was cherry trees that were all dead and gone, but we removed them all and all the irrigation. Starting in 2018, we started late fall 2017, but really 2018 was our first season on the farm. So we're going into our fourth season now. And Zach's grandfather passed away about 15 years ago. So we are kind of just going off of what we've learned on our own. Zach did spend a lot of time with his grandfather as a young child, but he was probably like 5 years old when his grandpa stopped farming. So, but there's a lot of love for the land and a love for farming here. And we're really happy to see it back in production. We're surrounded by farms, a lot of big agriculture farms, like hundreds of acres. We're only farming about 6 acres right now, and mostly market gardening, but there's also field crops like potatoes and tomatoes, green beans. And we just planted a 1/2 acre of fruit trees. And we do follow organic practices. So a little different than the other farmers around here who are longtime conventional farming. That's the gist of it.
Thanks. Yeah, I would love if you could share for us a little bit about some of the supports that have bolstered you as you've gotten started and sort of reclaiming this land for production.
So, I mean, a big part that has helped is that there are still a lot of tools that his grandfather left behind, like discs and some irrigation piping. And so we have been able to tap into those resources. He also farmed closely with our neighbors. So even though we may not be farming the same way as them conventionally, they do help us a lot in just pointing us in the right direction to, help us to get where we need to go, and like planting timelines and, beware of the June 4th frost. Like that's like, those are things that have helped us a lot, like just from having those long time experiences of the seasons here. Even though Zach's dad hasn't farmed, himself, he does know a lot. And his dad didn't use sprays in his corn, so he taught us how to cultivate that corn and how you're not going to have a crop if you're not cultivating. So I think that's weeds are a huge challenge. So his dad has really helped us a lot in knowing how frequently to cultivate and when to plant what, and how to get successions of things. So I mean, having those resources has been definitely pivotal to our success. There's certainly challenges because we're doing it differently, where people are like, well, why don't you just spray and you don't have to worry about those weeds? But we are pretty committed to not doing that, using herbicides or pesticides like that.
So what kind of fruit are you putting in?
So we put in peaches mostly, but we did put in some pears and a couple of cherry trees, sweet and tart. nectarines, mostly for ourselves because we want organic fruit that is not available to us. Peaches, we got, I think, 25 peach trees. So it's not a huge patch, but mostly just for our own love for fruit and wanting to have that organic fruit. We know it's going to be a challenge, and we're ready for it, I guess.
We're following the same format. My next speaker will know what's coming a little bit. How can folks stay connected with ZNN Farm, and what's going to be your next late breaking news story coming out of the farm this season? I know I've been following the online farm stand opened up just a few weeks ago, so you're already get food to your neighbors. What comes next this season?
Well, we did get a well installed on the farm. So previous years we were running about a quarter mile of irrigation to the farm, which left little pressure. So Zach was like up all night moving sprinklers. So we're really excited and grateful for that. I mean, I don't know, is it okay if I say how that came? Okay, so we got the microloan through Crosshatch and Oriana to be able to do that well this year. So that's a huge development. It's already installed. Zach's working on the irrigation piping over the next few days. So it's a huge infrastructure development for us. So in 2018, we started with 2 small greenhouses, and now in August, we got a big 30 by 96 greenhouse from Nifty Hoops. And we also put up another Caterpillar tunnel. So right now we've got 4 greenhouses going, and with the irrigation, yeah, we're really excited. So you can connect with us on Facebook or Instagram at Zen Farm LLC, ZEN Farm LLC, and also zenfarmllc.com. And I can put that in the chat. And so we're this year going to be at Alberta Farmers Market. We've already started once a week with curbside pickup. So that started last year as a result of COVID. We weren't sure about how farmers markets were going to be. As far as we knew, they were canceled. So we started doing an online website, online ordering system. So people order on Friday, pick up on Sunday at the farm. And last year we did that through the whole season, and we plan to do that for the foreseeable future. I don't see it going away, even if COVID, goes away, which we don't know when that will happen, but people really like the convenience of it. And it's worked really well for us. So, and we also have a roadside stand in the summertime, because we're in this really agriculturally rich area, there's lots of farm stands already established, so people are kind of used to it. And that's another plus of having family around. We have an uncle who has a corner property, so we could put up a sign saying Zen Farm this way. Well, we're ZNN Farm, but we go by Zen Farm online because you can't use an ampersand in your Instagrams or emails. So that's how that kind of came. Yeah.
Thanks so much. And like I said, thanks for joining us this morning. I'm sure there's work to do, and you have family bouncing around in the living room with you. Appreciate it.
We have a 2.5-year-old, so that adds to the challenges.
Speaking of another family farming, I see the self-appointed field manager just joined my friend Caitlin McSweeney, who is of Danu Hoff Farm and Market, Farm and Farm Market. So Caitlin, I'll ask you to just share a brief introduction of your farm and family as well.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Yeah, our little field manager, 10-month-old, keeping us on track. So my husband and I own Danu Hoff Farm. We are just north of Mansalona. Our farm stories got a lot of twists and turns. We had been planning to buy a farm, and we had a 5-year plan. to do so. And actually in 2017, my husband was going to meet friends and took a wrong turn. And we found our property. It's a 160-acre farm that had not been farmed in probably at least 80 years from what we can find, but it used to be a dairy farm. And the back portion of the fields were potatoes and things. So we went for it and kind of did a crazy one. We ended up moving from Traverse City. Well, actually, we bought the farm October 2017, moved October 2nd, and got married October 5th. So it was a crazy 1 week of insanity. We're both first generation. Our grandparents farmed. My grandfather has a bicentennial farm in the UP, and then his grandparents have farms down in Manistee area. So yeah, we kind of jumped in. I had done 4-H and things. So currently now we do pasture age heritage breed pigs. We do farrow to finish. So we have our breeding herd on property, and then our feeder pigs as well. We also do chickens. We have egg layers, and then we'll do meat chickens with chicken tractors this year. We're currently battling a fox right now. And we do a small market garden as well, with everything from asparagus that was already established when we moved here to a lot of winter squash and some summer gourds and squashes and radishes and things. The other thing we kind of like got on our farm is the previous owners ran an antique store. So we already have a farm market set up. And we're right in the corner of 131 and Door Road. So we're right on 131, which is really nice. We have a nice billboard and sign there. So we work with about 10 other local farmers too, carrying their products and produce as well. So that's been nice to help the community as much as we can too with that. But yeah, we jumped in, we've been bootstrapping it. We found that like local Mansalona hardware store actually has a lot of rental equipment. So our first year we rented their tractor and had friends chip in and help us with the rototiller. And then we've made friends in the community that have been a really big help for us to ask, you know, what to do with different plants and how to mix different things. So it's been nice to slowly get involved in the farming community up here and have those other farmers to pull information from.
Yeah, thanks. You anticipated my question about supports. Any other resources that come to mind as far as what's helped you get started?
Yeah, our biggest one actually is we just got the crosshatch micro loan through with Grain Train, and that'll be a huge help this year. We've really increased our meat production. So we now can take the steps to put in, and we've already ordered it, and it should be here in June and set up and ready to go. But we're doing a 14 by 10 walk-in freezer. So that's been a big one for us, is just having the storage space. And we've continued to increase our meat production for our pork and our chickens. And so we're super excited about that. That'll be a huge game changer for us to be able to have meat year round and hopefully meet more demands and get a little bit into the wholesale market, some with our meat as well.
Great. And last question is, how can folks stay connected, and what's going to be the next story you're sharing from the Instagram on farm?
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook at Daniel Hoff Farm. We also have a website, danielhofffarm.com or danielhoff.com. And we do Facebook and Instagram.
Well, I'm inclined to open it up so we can talk together, and we have a full 30 minutes, which I'm really glad about, eager to engage with everyone. I was just scanning through the chat, and I think there's a really important connection on the topic. One theme we're hearing from both of the farmers who share the perspective is that neighbor supports and that direct farmer to farmer mentorship has been invaluable, just in getting to know your land and the seasons and some of the tricks of the trade. I will share that cross Wasatch facilitates guild groups of farmers. So we try to provide some forum for exchange of that sort of agricultural advice, and which we hope intersects farmers from all different backgrounds, all different geographies, all different stories of how they've come to farming. But Jessica raised in the chat this thought that Black, Indigenous, people of color farmers who may seek to locate here may have a harder time and may have some additional barriers of implicit or explicit racism or political boundaries that might isolate them from their neighbors. And so it's just kind of an interesting topic. I'd love to see what folks think about supports that might help folks who are new to the area and who don't meet a white settler sort of stereotype of coming to farming. Thanks for that thought, Jessica. How do we become a community of welcome and of support for everyone, especially in this difficult profession?
I can jump in. Just to tie back to the Michigan Local Food Council Network, which was mentioned earlier. At our most recent last Thursday, Jennifer Silveri, who's the head of MIFS, talked about the new director of the Farm Service Agency, whose name is escaping me right now. He is a former farmer, or was a farmer anyway. And her comments after being in some listening sessions that have been held, I think they're over now, but they were mid last month, was that this new director really, in her opinion, is going to be a game changer for FSA. And one of the things that she stressed strongly was that there will be more and more FSA attention placed towards socially disadvantaged farmers, and that ASAP, go to your USDA Farm Service Agency, virtually or otherwise, I'm not sure how the sign up is working. And there is a form there that you self-identify on a customer data worksheet to be a socially disadvantaged designation with FSA. And I would imagine it crosses some of the other USDA programs, and that there will be more and more emphasis placed on programs and funding that are targeted towards socially disadvantaged farmers, which include a lot of the groups that we're talking about, and certainly the need is strong there. So that was one of the takeaways that was burning in my brain, along with another bit of advice that farmers should apply for the Paycheck Protection Program. If a lot of farmers have been steering away from it because it's a loan, quote unquote, but the loan is forgiven under some pretty reasonable terms. So anyway, but just I guess some hope on the horizon that with the change in administration, there's a lot of things going on within USDA that seem to be really encouraging for beginning and new farmers.
Yeah. And, so recently for our program, the Great Lakes Incubator Farm, we applied for a beginning farmer rancher development grant. And in that grant process, we are committed to at least 60% of our participants being from an underserved or historically marginalized communities. So that's definitely a goal of our program, and we're hoping to aid in that diversity in our area for sure. And I'm on the board of MIFS, which is one of the organizations Wendy was talking about. And that's at the center of our work with MIFS too, is we have a women in ag group, we have a veterans in ag group, we work with Grow Detroit, Eastern Market, just so many awesome organizations and groups, and are continuing to center those BIPOC communities as much as we can in our work, which is great.
Yeah,
One other thing I would say is that when the Small Farm Conference starts to meet together again, it's just a great place to connect. It's amazing how many people we've connected with from downstate at that conference that we wouldn't have run into otherwise.
thanks for sharing that. I was just going to say that there are really strong connections of farms across the state too. So just like with other supports that you can find in a virtual setting, there are really robust and active communities of online support for farming specific to Michigan even. So there's some geographic center. It's not just a World Wide Web, but that folks can connect across geographies for those mentorship opportunities. And it's a topic that many of the partners who do food systems work regularly in our region have been engaged in, is about how to support linking farm mentorships in a way that might not be necessarily neighbor to neighbor, but still in a supportive relationship from a farmer with experience to someone getting started. Well, any more resources that folks are burning to share, or any other topics?
One other thing I'd like to share, I don't know how much you're aware of the American Farmland Trust training for farm, for people who are interested in farming. It is fabulous. We don't happen to have anyone that I know of in the Michigan area who's trained for it. My husband and I did do some training, but not enough that I'd feel, and we're too busy. We couldn't possibly, but it would be fabulous if we could develop a couple of trainers in our, doesn't have to be close region, just within the couple of states here, for the American Farmland training, because it's absolutely excellent and it extends out in directions that you might not have thought of. We got interested in it through the Conservancy because our land is conserved. And there are just some very interesting things. I know that Nikki Rothwell in Leelanau has been very interested and gets a lot of questions about how can I get access to farmland. We're not nearly as together in the region as it would be nice to be as far as access to farmland. But part of that is developing a way of thinking about access. And I think that's what the American Farmland training does. So just to call out to anybody who might know someone who's interested in becoming a trainer and then offering it in our region, it sure would be great.
Just to clarify, what I'm seeing on their webpage is a land access training. Is that what you're referring to?
That's it. That's much better way of saying it. It's land access, and it covers everything. Just deep enough, I think, like getting access to land through mentorships, through contracts, through leasing, et cetera. We are in that older farm age group, and we're looking at putting all of our land into trust and then having it be leased out when we're no longer farming. But very tricky to get to that. And part of what's tricky is finding people who would really be capable of taking on a lease and farming, because that is not, it's not like, oh, this is a great idea, I think I'll do it. The best leases would be at least 20 years with a continual, it really sets you up for farming for your life, really. And what we find is that ability to have that conversation from someone who's been farming for generations with someone who probably has got fabulous ideas and abilities, but not the knowledge. And that's a very big chasm to get across. And the American Farmland training it kind of fills in, not the farming stuff itself, but all those other things you need to know to think about. I mean, you know, some of the things we've kind of written up a 2-page how you can farm this land. You know, one of our rules is you make money on depreciated equipment. You know, the minute you start paying a whole lot of money to have nice new equipment, you almost can't farm. You know, there are a lot of things that people who are coming into it may not know, and they may get poor advice. And I think the American Farmland Training is designed to make it possible for the conversation to start at the right level between someone who's been farming and someone who'd like to farm. And the person who's farming would like someone to farm their land. It's possible to work with somebody who doesn't know the financial and you know, just what it takes to stay alive for 5 years in a farm. So yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that.
Sure.
Daniel, can I chime in real quick? Kathy, you said a couple of things that I thought were really interesting. Particularly, you were talking about your land being under a conservation easement. And I think, you know, it's interesting in our area, you know, I think there is like a need for sort of a revitalized structure or model of farming, like group farming or something, because you know, we do have an incredible amount of land that is under agricultural conservation easements, which is awesome because we want that land to be protected. And it does actually make it a little bit more affordable for people. However, a lot of like the newer farmers, you know, coming in can't necessarily afford to buy, you know, 100 acres of, you know, what was, you know, an apple orchard or cherry orchard. And they're looking for, you know, starting a little bit smaller. And when that land is under an agricultural easement, it cannot be broken up into different parcels and stuff. So it makes it a little bit trickier for, you know, the person that's trying to, you know, sell their land or possibly, or have it managed by others, and stay in agricultural production, but they can't, you know, break it out into different parcels to sell to multiple people to make it a little bit more accessible for those new farmers. But if there was, you know, some way that, you know, people could, I mean, I think this is a very possible thing, you know, a co-op situation on larger tracts of land like that can't be broken out, you know, and can still maintain that protection. You know, I think it'd be a really interesting thing to explore more. And obviously when you're under easement, the thing that makes that a little bit tricky is you wouldn't be able to, you know, set up multiple operations per se, just because of the you know, limitations on new buildings and structures and things like that on a conserved property. But maybe there's, you know, that sharing aspect, where people just work together and using the same equipment, but maybe, you know, they're doing some different things on that parcel, but still being able to, you know, just have fewer of those, you know, new costs to, you know, all the equipment. But if you're sharing equipment on the same land, and sharing, you know, wash pack facilities and all those different things, I feel like that would be a really cool model. I don't know if maybe somebody does know of people that are doing something like that. I've not heard of anybody in our area, but if anybody does know, I'd be really curious of how that works, because I think it's a kind of a cool way to do things, especially on protected land.
Well, and one thing to keep in mind is that although the land can't be sold except as a package, we put 3 farms under one conservancy because we're beautiful fruit area, as long as the climate doesn't change too much more. And so, you know, fruit, really, you've got to have land to do fruit in the amount that we do. And so, but leases will allow you to absolutely, you know, we've thought a lot about, we've worked with a couple of people who've done some animals on our farm. We're working with someone else who's going to. So leasing out smaller portions on a conserved land is absolutely fine. And you're absolutely right. Although you've got a farmstead, a conserved farm says impermeable surfaces have to be within, well, you can only have so much impermeable surface. They're changing a couple of things, but it has to be within an identified farmstead that is whatever, 2 acres, and then you've got 80 acres that you cannot put any impermeable surface or a structure on. But that doesn't mean you can't put a hoop house on, because if it doesn't have a cement bottom, it's not an impermeable surface. And so you have a lot of options within conserved land for having many different farmers on that conserved land. You don't have to stay within what you've been doing with it. And I think that you're right. The co-op model is probably, you may know about Sylvan Farms, Chris Newman down in Virginia. He's really working to figure out how to bring different farmers together. It's a great model to learn about too. And the wonderful thing is that he's really in that space of a multicultural too, which is really great to learn from as well. But I think I guess this is the point I'm making, Lauren, exactly what you've wandered into, which is these conversations need to be able to be taken place sooner rather than later between different generations and people at different levels of farming, because there are people, we don't believe we're alone in wanting to set up our land for the next generation to simply lease it and we leave it to whatever, a foundation or something. We haven't got it figured out yet. But in order to do that, we really need to be developing these ideas on both sides of the fence. And that's where I think the American Farmland Trust training at least gets more people in the conversation higher up the learning curve to have that. So anyway, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that rich engagement to kind of get into some of the nuance and lots of the complexity that underlies this. I did post a few resources in the chat, both Chris Newman's effort called Sylvan Aqua Farm in Virginia, which I'm eager to learn more about. And then I posted a link to a farm operated by friends of mine in the Ann Arbor area called the Green Things Farm Collective. So it was a merging of a few different agricultural-based businesses on a single piece of property, combining a diverse fruit and veg, or mostly veg and meat CSA type model farm with a seed company, seed production, flower farming, where they're sort of sharing in the equipment, land, and then a lot of the administrative functions on farm.
Hey, Daniel, a bit of a tangent on this conversation. Also, that I've been interested in is agricultural land ownership in our state and laws to prevent foreign corporations from buying farmland. There's about 6 states, I think, in the US that have these laws. And I recently got the National Farmers Union interested in taking up, at least looking at it. We need to start seeing about this, because that also takes land, takes our water away, takes land away from new beginning farmers. And so I think that is something that we should have in the back of our heads of how we raise a collective voice, because it does seem like a win-win, easy, to take to a conservative legislature and a Democratic governor, like who wouldn't like it? And I did mention it to the governor once when I had her here, but very briefly. And so I think that is something that we should be thinking about.
Thanks so much for bringing that up, Kelly. Are there next steps that folks might engage in if that's an issue that's
well, I'm going to get back. I'm going to have a meeting with the Farmers Union next week. And so maybe I can start to figure out how to proceed from there. Because we'd really have to just come up with some kind of presentation or a lead organization, something kind of to take to the governor, and then she could take it, as an idea to the legislature. So we need an organization kind of to head that up.
Yeah. My head is feeling full and my resource list has grown long. So thank you all for that. What I want to commit to is that we'll be sharing a recording of this video on a YouTube channel that we've started for the Food and Farming Network. I'll post a list of, I think we can post a list of resources in the comments. So links to some of the things that are mentioned for folks who maybe just want to skim back to that. I'll also invite you and ask one of my Food and Farming Network colleagues to post a link to our Facebook page where we can be sure to follow up on any late breaking news that comes from that Farmers Union effort, Kelly, and if there are any calls to action, calls to engage that might bubble up around that initiative. We do have 8 minutes or so left, so just because I said I'm feeling full of resources doesn't mean you can't share a few more in this time before we wrap up. So feel free if you have any other connections to the topic or just want to share a story or hope or what you're getting started. When I was in program management, I always encourage folks to sort of say, what's your intention? What's your professional direction? You never know what a group like this might be able to offer in terms of helping you along your way too.
This is Don Crow. Can you hear me?
Can you hear now? Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thanks. Just a question for Caitlin. Where have you been able to find slaughter facilities for your heritage hogs?
Yeah, so we use Triple R Meats in Buckley. We use them because we have our license to sell by the piece and the part. So it only gives you 2 options in Northern Michigan, which is Evil's and Triple R. So we use Triple R for our pork.
Okay, and you know, there's been a lot of work done in the past on whether we need additional facilities. So do you feel that you're served adequately by Triple R and Evil's?
No, and actually we ran into a problem this past year and we were stuck with more pigs than we were supposed to have because Triple R contracted COVID and had to shut down. So we were actually had 6 more pigs, which actually did become a problem for a little minute trying to keep everybody separated between our breeding herd and our feeder herds. So we did run into that snafu. And there's definitely, I think, a need because we have to schedule almost a year out to even get dates for our pigs.
Okay, so it's still a capacity issue.
Yeah, there's definitely a capacity issue. The biggest problem is there are other butchers, but per USDA laws and regulations, we have to use a USDA certified butcher. So even if we could just get a few more USDA certified. The other crazy thing that I don't understand, so we do meat chickens also. And for me, poultry is so much worse as far as health and things than pigs, just poultry and salmonella and things like that. My husband and I come from the food industry side before we became farmers. But like we use a butcher for our chickens in Fife Lake, and it's great. It's super quick and easy, and they're USDA exempt. And I wish somehow there could be a USDA exemption even for butchers, because I don't feel like you always have to have someone on property every minute. It's almost like over government, or organized or kept under lock and key. So it does make it hard. It would definitely be nice. And I even know of a farm in the UP that drives their hogs and cattle all the way from the UP across the bridge to Triple R, which is crazy. I can't imagine taking a livestock trailer across the bridge full of pigs or horses or not horses, but pigs or cows or anything like that. So there's definitely a need for sure for more USDA butchers or some type of a little let on leniency of butchering practices, or as far as having to have a USDA person right there at all times type of a thing. Especially since poultry can get a USDA exemption. I'm surprised that there isn't a USDA exemption option for some of the cattle and pig butchers or something.
Well, one way to do it is if Michigan, this would be another Michigan change, became, other states do it where they do their own inspection and regulation. And the thing about that is, that's nice, is that then you're only able to sell that product intrastate. And so what we did face with some of these small processors was during the height of COVID, when the big houses went down, then people from out of state started coming in and flooding ours. And so, you know, our Michigan farmers, small farmers, were being shut out. But so if you had our own MDARD being the regulator, you know, it doesn't reduce the price of building it, which everybody tells me it's going to cost $1 million. I've been asking around for other people, Don, trying to figure out how to do it. And but it seems like that is kind of one solution. Then you don't have to have a USDA person on site. So it could reduce the bottleneck, but then you still have to come up with the funding for how to, you know, come up with more.
Well,
facilities.
from my years as an MDARD commissioner, the MDARD was always resistant to a state inspection program within MDARD. I think for getting enough small farmers with small herds, I think it might be worthwhile to investigate again and take a story to MDARD to revisit state slaughter facilities.
Yeah.
This is a topic that I'm engaged in my work, and I know many other partners are as well. And I feel like we may be unearthing an area of common interest and concern for potentially a future topic, and work to flow from there as well. I'm watching the clock to see we're approaching the 10 o'clock hour when folks may have other obligations to pivot to. I was just putting into the chat my contact information. So I would encourage you to email me at daniel@crosshatch.org if you joined us but didn't maybe have an opportunity to share yet today, but wish to stay connected. I'd be really happy to connect you to our Food and Farming Network, as well as the individual partners who may be able to assist in your farm hopes and farm plans, or other food interests, food and community interests broadly that you'd like to be engaged in. Anyways, gratitude for everyone joining and for what you shared. This is a really rich discussion to launch our day and go forth and make abundance from it. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. It's nice seeing you.